what's up, guys? If you hang out in the art world, especially in the online art world, you'll notice a sort of a strange superstition the art community has for the style of Japanese manga. The superstition is that it's an inferior art style that you kind of become attached to in your infancy as an artist, but you'll eventually grow out of your fondness of it. And I would respond thusly: yes, liking or disliking manga is a matter of preference. However, what is the preference for the majority of people? It just seems like everybody who looks at the manga style will at least compliment it on the fact that it is in fact pretty. It's easy on the eyes, it's simple enough to where anybody can figure out what is happening in most of these illustrated pieces, and it's not so overbearing or pretentious like most modern art pieces that tend to put people off. Not only that, but manga is often used to tell stories, which is what any good piece of art should really endeavor to do, to represent ideas and tell stories. If you look at the market for how much art has been produced in recent years, I would say about 70% of it has been done in the manga style, in the US alone. Then you go over to Japan and of course it's more like 100%. So given all of that data, I think it's safe to say that Japanese manga is the storyteller's art style. That is not to disinclude other art styles that tell good stories. Most video games these days are produced in a far Western art style, and I think they look amazing. But you don't hear me putting any of those things down. You don't hear most manga artists putting down Western art styles in favor of their preference. What you do hear are Western artists putting down Far Eastern art styles for some reason. I'm not sure why they feel the need to do this. Maybe it's out of insecurity. Or the fact that you can fit the entire sales of the comic book industry this year into the sales of one manga volume. Again, it all comes back to where the money is going. And I think the money is going to people who illustrate in this style more so than people who illustrate in a traditional American style. We've had quite a few foreigners comment that the art styles of DC and Marvel are quote-unquote not cute. And if you've read Marvel comics, you'll notice it does tend to draw everything in a more realistic manner. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Only they don't really draw everything in a realistic style. They tunify reality. They water things down to the basic bones and deconstruct things, break them apart, and put them back together. That's what cartoonists do. And to say that one form of cartooning is worse than another form of cartooning is absolutely ridiculous. It's absurd. It definitely shows off your bias. So why does the manga art style get so much flack? Well, it gets a lot of flack because the majority of manga successes are done by people who are working themselves into the ground. They're hard to compete with. It's very difficult to compete with somebody who's working themselves into the ground to put out a good product. Americans most of the time are not willing to do that. They'd rather go to conventions and hang out with their buddies and shoot a bull, engage with friends, meet new people, and that sort of thing. And there's nothing wrong with doing that stuff. In America, we call that having a life. So you'd think you'd want to get to success as efficiently as possible, right? There's the question of whether you're being disingenuous by adopting a manga style, right? Because you're an American, not a Japanese person. Well, this is the interesting thing. When people look at a piece, they go for the eyes, they go for the focal point, the thing the artist is directing you to look at, and then they judge what the piece is by that, rather than looking at the rest of it. I can take an illustration of Peter Parker Spider-Man, and all I have to do is adjust the eyes and the hair to change the difference between what people think of as Western or Eastern, whether they think of it as a manga style art piece or whether they think of it as more Western. That's the only two things you have to change, because that's all they look at. These people who are making these claims about art are not analyzing art. And why on earth would you listen to people who don't really know what they're talking about? That's all I'm saying.